I've grown cucumbers for 22 years, 9 varieties, 4 states, 2 climates that had no business growing cucumbers at all. I've watched downy mildew wipe out every unprotected planting in my county in under a week, while my row stood untouched. I've hand-pollinated flowers the size of a grain of rice when the bees never showed, and still pulled a full harvest. I've spotted a beetle most gardeners walk right past, and stopped it before it reached the plant's veins. I've built trellising that held through a windstorm that flattened every flimsy stake in the neighborhood. And I've learned, the hard way, how one forgotten cucumber can shut down an entire plant's harvest for the rest of the season. That's not luck. That's 22 years watching what happens below the leaf line, the places gardening advice never looks. So when I say 9 mistakes quietly end a cucumber harvest every season, I'm not guessing. I've made every one. I know exactly when each one strikes and exactly what to do instead. Stay to the end. One of these 9 has ended entire plantings without the gardener ever knowing why. Here's the part that's going to sting. Some of the most careful gardeners I know, soil tested every spring, watered at the base, crop rotation like clockwork, still lose half their harvest most years, and every one of them blames themselves. They didn't water enough, planted too late, picked the wrong variety. It isn't them. Cucumbers get sold to you as easy. Full sun, keep it watered, thin the seedlings, done. That lie sets you up to fail. Underneath that friendly reputation, cucumbers are heavy-feeding, disease-prone, moisture-obsessed. They stress the second soil hits 95 degrees F. Their seed rots below 60 degrees F. Their roots hate being disturbed, which means the transplant it like a tomato advice has been working against you since before the first true leaf opened. None of that's on the seed packet. So when the vine yellows, or the fruit turns bitter, or the whole planting collapses in a single week of July heat, you look inward. What did I do wrong? Wrong question. 9 specific mechanisms quietly end cucumber harvests every season. None of them are about how much you love your garden. Nobody told you what was happening 12 inches underground, or 3 days before the wilt, or 2 weeks before the beetles. That ends today. 9 mistakes. The 9 biggest reasons a cucumber harvest quietly falls apart, and everyone traces back to information nobody hands you with the seed packet. But before we start counting, I need to warn you about one. Mistake number 8 has ended entire plantings, not a few plants, the whole row, and almost nobody who's lived through it ever understood why. They blamed drought. They blamed their soil. Some tore out their beds and started over the next spring, convinced they'd done something wrong. They hadn't. What took them down came from outside their garden entirely, outside their soil, their choices. And by the time you can see it happening, there's nothing left to do. I'm not telling you what it is yet. Sit with that. We're going in order. Mistakes 1 through 7 are just as capable of wrecking your season, and skipping ahead means missing the exact week each one strikes. Some of these are choices you're making right now without realizing it. Some were made the day you bought your seed packet. The damage just hasn't shown up yet. Real numbers, real mechanisms, no water more nonsense. And when we hit number 8, stop what you're doing. That one only gets one shot at prevention. There's no fixing it after. Let's start with mistake number 1. It happens before your seed ever touches soil. Mistake 1, sowing too early. Symptom: you plant the moment it feels warm enough. No frost in sight. Instead of seedlings in a week, silence. Dig down and the seed's gone soft, dark, slimy, dead before it had a chance. Mechanism: cucumber seed doesn't just dislike cold soil, it rots in it. Germination needs 70 to 80 degrees F, 3 to 10 days at that temperature. Drop below 60 degrees F, and the seed doesn't wait to sprout. It breaks down underground while you're checking the weather app. Soil temperature lags behind air temperature, sometimes by days. Your seed can already be dying while the forecast says perfect planting weather. Fix: forget the calendar. Forget how the air feels on your skin. Buy a $5 soil thermometer. Wait for a sustained 70-80 degrees F in the ground before you sow. Short season, count backward, Seed goes in no later than 2.5 to 3 months before your first fall frost. Mistake 2. Sowing too close and not thinning. Symptom: a gorgeous little forest of seedlings comes up, then stalls. Thin, stringy stems, delayed fruiting, every plant underperforming a single well-spaced one. Mechanism: cucumbers are heavy feeders with wide-reaching roots. Crowd them, and every plant fights its neighbors for a fraction of the water and nutrients it should have had entirely to itself. Worse, crowding raises humidity at the base of the planting, and humidity is exactly what fungal disease waits for. A crowded row isn't just underperforming, it's a disease incubator with leaves. Fix: 2 seeds or 1 transplant every 2 feet. Thin ruthlessly to the single strongest plant the moment cotyledon leaves appear. No sentimentality. Rows minimum 36 inches apart, non-negotiable for airflow. Mistake 3. Transplanting instead of direct sowing. Symptom: you start indoors for a head start, move the seedlings out on schedule, and they just sit there. Not dying, not growing, a week, sometimes 2, of dead air. Meanwhile, the direct sown plant 2 rows over, planted 2 weeks later, blows right past it. Mechanism: cucumbers thrive on undisturbed roots, full stop. Unlike a tomato, which shrugs off a transplant, a cucumber root takes the disturbance as a genuine shock, and that shock converts straight into stalled growth. The longer that plant's been comfortable in its pot, the harder the shock hits, which means the moment you're most tempted to transplant, once it looks strong, with true leaves already out, is exactly when it's most vulnerable. Fix: direct sow, always if you can. If you truly can't, short season, slug pressure, move it young, at first cotyledon or first true leaf, no later. 2-inch soil blocks or soaked decomposing pots as backup, never left half buried where they'll dry out and choke the roots. Mistake 4. Misreading what yellow fruit and stressed leaves are telling you. Symptom: fruit turns yellow before it's finished growing. Leaves go dull. The reflex is always the same: more water, more fertilizer, hope for the best. Mechanism: a cucumber turning yellow early isn't ripening, it's panicking, rushing to set seed because it thinks it's dying. 4 causes, only 4: missing nutrients, too little water, heat past 95 degrees F, or disease already working underneath. They all look identical on the surface, which is why gardeners keep treating the wrong one. Watering a heat-stressed plant harder doesn't help. Fertilizing a diseased one doesn't help. It just buys the real problem more time. Fix: stop guessing. Check soil moisture with your own finger before blaming drought. Check the actual daytime high against that 95 degrees F line. Keep the baseline strong. A well-fed, well-watered cucumber shrugs off stress that would flatten a neglected one. Mistake 5. Panicking over blossoms with no fruit. Symptom: the vines loaded with blossoms, almost none turning into fruit. So the fertilizer comes out, more and more, chasing a problem it can't fix. Mechanism: blossoms with no fruit means one of 2 things: a missing nutrient the plant needs to convert flower into fruit, or a pollination failure, usually from relentless rain, keeping pollinators grounded. Here's the trap: dumping on more nitrogen-heavy fertilizer right now makes it worse. It pushes the plant into producing more leaves instead of more fruit. The fix becomes the reason it never recovers. Fix: diagnose before you feed. Rainy stretch, no bees flying. Hand pollinate with a small brush, flower to flower. Suspect nutrition. Reach for a balanced feed like dilute fish emulsion, never high nitrogen, so you're supporting fruit set instead of sabotaging it. Mistake 6. Ignoring the cucumber beetle as just cosmetic damage. Symptom: a handful of small, striped, lemon-yellow beetles show up early. The damage looks minor: a nibble here, a hole there, so it gets shrugged off. Weeks later, the entire plant collapses like someone flipped a switch. Mechanism: that beetle isn't just chewing your leaves. It's injecting bacterial wilt straight into your plant's vascular system with every bite. Once that bacteria sets up inside the plant's water transport tissue, there's no cure. The plant is dying from the inside while it still looks green on the outside. The leaf damage you can see is the least important part. The real damage is invisible, and it's already happening while you're deciding whether it's worth worrying about. Fix: every beetle sighting is an emergency, not a shrug. Floating row cover from the moment of sowing, edges weighted completely. These things find any gap you leave. Cover comes off only to weed, and off entirely once flowers open for pollination. Crush every single one you see, no exceptions. Stop what you're doing, listen carefully. This is mistake number 8, the one I warned you about at the start. Every mistake so far came from something inside your control. Your spacing, your watering, your beetle vigilance. This one doesn't. This one comes in on the wind. Downy mildew doesn't lurk in your soil from last season, waiting. It travels, sometimes enormous distances, carried on air currents, and it can land in a garden that's never once had a case of it. No soil test catches it early, no way to inspect for it in advance. It arrives, uninvited, into a planting that looked completely healthy an hour before. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. By the time you can see it, water-soaked spots spreading across the leaves, the infection is already locked in. This isn't a nutrient gap you patch with a feeding. This isn't a pollination problem you fix with a paintbrush. Once downy mildew is in the leaf tissue, there's no reversing it. You're not managing a problem anymore. You're watching a decline you can no longer stop. A gardener who did everything right, perfect spacing, perfect soil, perfect watering, vigilant pest control, can still lose the whole planting to this, through no fault of their own, because the threat was never in their garden to begin with. It was in the air, and the only window you get is before it arrives, never after. The fix, you can't stop it from traveling to you, so the game shifts to resistance and speed of detection. Downy mildew-resistant varieties are your single strongest defense. Nothing else comes close. Water the soil, never the leaves. Water in the morning, never the evening. Wet foliage overnight is an open invitation. Check your leaves constantly during humid stretches, so if it lands, you catch it before it takes the whole row. Before the final mistake, I'm giving you something extra. This is the kind of thing people used to pay a horticultural consultant for. 3 quick techniques, then we close this out. 1. The fingernail test. Saving your own seed, don't guess by color. Press a fingernail into the seed. If it dents, it's not ready. A truly mature cucumber seed is rock solid, sharp pointed at both ends. It won't dent, period. Skip this and you're storing seed that never had the germination power you thought it did. 2. Free real estate through companion planting. Baby greens, fast-bolting herbs, salad radish, all thrive in the cool shade a trellised cucumber vine throws off. Same square footage, second harvest for free. 3. The succession calendar almost nobody follows. First succession right after last frost. Second, 3 to 4 weeks later. Third, 6 weeks after the first planting, not the second. That exact rhythm keeps cucumbers coming continuously instead of one big flush followed by nothing. Free, all 3. Most people never learn them until they've already lost a season the hard way. 1 mistake left, and it's the sneakiest one on this list because it looks harmless right up until it isn't. Mistake 9, letting fruit overripen on the vine. Symptom 1. Cucumber gets missed. It grows too big, starts turning yellow, and instead of pulling it, it just stays. A week or 2 later, the entire plant's fruit production quietly craters, even on flowers pollinated well after that fruit was left behind. Mechanism: this is the mistake that looks like nothing and does the most damage on this list. A cucumber plant has one biological job: mature its seed, then stop. The moment a single fruit fully matures seed on the vine, the plant reads that as mission accomplished and redirects its energy away from new flowers, away from new fruit. One forgotten, yellowing cucumber can throttle the entire plant's productivity for the rest of the season, while every other fruit around it still looks perfectly fine. Fix: harvest relentlessly. Never let anything mature seed on the vine, even the ones too big to want to eat. The second one turns yellow, it comes off. Chickens, compost, doesn't matter, just off the vine. Consistent harvesting is the single behavior standing between a plant that fruits all the way to frost and one that quietly shuts down in August. That's all 9. Sowing too early into cold soil that kills the seed before it sprouts. Crowding seedlings into a disease incubator. Transplanting when direct sowing would have saved you weeks. Misreading what a yellowing fruit is telling you. Panicking over blossoms instead of diagnosing the real cause. treating a cucumber beetle like a cosmetic problem instead of the disease vector it is, building a trellis too weak to survive its own harvest, losing an entire planting to something that arrived on the wind with zero warning, and letting one forgotten fruit quietly shut the whole plant down. None of these were ever about how much you cared. They were about information nobody handed you with the seed packet. Tell me where you're growing, your zone, your state, your country, and tell me which one of these 9 you've made without ever knowing it, until right now. I read every comment. Next week, I'm coming back with something that works through a completely different mechanism, buried in the soil, that most gardeners have never heard of. Before you go, 3 things. They take less time than it took to grow one of these mistakes into a dead plant. First, subscribe, not for the algorithm, for you. I'm covering the yeast root feeding method next week, then the exact fall succession calendar that keeps cucumbers coming until frost. If even one of these 9 mistakes helped, the next video saves you a whole season. Second comment, tell me your zone, your state, or your country, and which of these 9 you've made without realizing it until today. I read every comment. It's where I learn what to cover next. If mistake 6 caught you off guard, say so. If you've already lost a planting to number 8, I want that story. It helps the next person watching avoid the same one. Third, if this actually helped, hit like before you go. It's the fastest way to get this in front of the next gardener about to make mistake number 1 without knowing it. 1 second, costs nothing, means everything for a channel like this. And if you know somebody fighting a yellow, wilting cucumber plant right now, somebody about to blame themselves for something that was never their fault, send them this video today. Not next week. Today, while there's still time to catch it. 22 years of mistakes got me here, so you don't have to make them yourself. Subscribe, drop your zone below, and I'll see you in the next one.